Hi there, here we are again, at the crossroads of quiet reflection and scientific discovery. Forget the headlines of today. We are now concentrating solely on the first civilization and the objects they might control. A fascinating subject defined by the idea that deep space is less random than we assume. Imagine, for a moment, that everything we have ever measured, every calculation made since the first philosopher looked up at the night sky, was merely a single frame in a cosmic movie that someone else is directing. The air feels sharp and dry tonight, doesn't it? As if holding its breath, waiting for a revelation. We often speak of the Oumuamua object, that tumbling, cigar-shaped visitor that drifted through our solar system in 2017. And we mention, with a touch more recent curiosity, the interstellar comet 3I Atlas, officially known as C2014Y2 Atlas, detected by the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. It was a traveler from outside, a messenger from the vast, dark emptiness between the stars. It moved with an impossible casualness, a ghost in the gravitational machine, but its presence was not what truly fascinated the quiet, late-night thinkers. It was the fact of its disappearance, or rather, its fragmentation, its spectacular, slow disintegration into 21 pieces in the deep, cold vacuum. The numbers involved are astonishing. 3I Atlas broke apart roughly 460 million miles from the Sun, moving at a speed of about 90,000 kilometers per hour. Comets break. This is a fact of physics. The gentle kiss of sunlight vaporizes their ice, creating those grand, dusty tails we watch from Earth. But what if the data suggested something far more peculiar? 3I Atlas was an interstellar object, a comet from a place so cold, so dark, that it should have been composed of materials far tougher, far more pristine than any native comet in our own solar system. It had barely begun its journey inward, still deep in the cold. It fragmented not due to the expected solar heat stress, but as if it were performing a perfectly choreographed act of self-erasure, precisely at the moment the solar gravity truly began to exert its influence. It was too early, too distant, too sudden for its composition. The pattern of its disintegration didn't look like an accident. It looked like a deconstruction. Now, hold that thought gently in the silent center of your mind. What if the first civilization in the galaxy, a species that might predate our own species by billions of years, a species that solved the universe's riddles and then grew bored with them? What if this civilization controls the movement of objects like 3I Atlas? What if the object wasn't a comet at all, but a piece of ancient, self-repairing megastructure, a surveillance drone that completed its data-gathering mission and then initiated its own quiet, perfect destruction? We speak of Dyson spheres and Kardashev types, but what if the true signature of a Type 3 civilization isn't a massive power plant around a star, but a humble, utterly silent rock that breaks exactly when and where it is commanded to? This brings us to a theme older than the pyramids, older than the first scratch of a story on clay. It's the idea of the divine intervention in the mundane, of the gods walking disguised among us. The ancient stories always spoke of signs in the heavens, not grand, blazing battles, but subtle shifts, a shadow falling too quickly, a star not quite where it should be. 3I Atlas is not a threat, but perhaps it is a marker, a single, faint breadcrumb dropped from a celestial carriage. Slow your breath now. Feel the weight of the moment. We are standing on a planet that is spinning at over 1,600 kilometers per hour, orbiting a star at over 107,000 kilometers per hour, and yet we feel utterly still. This quiet moment is precious. It is the moment we allow ourselves to truly ask the forbidden questions, the questions that whisper that the universe might not be random, but intentionally designed. And if it is designed, who is the architect? We're settling into a story that spans not just space, but deep, silent time. Leave a comment telling me what time it is and where you are listening from tonight. It's a way for us to all look up at the same mystery. Together, 3I Atlas scattered its 21 pieces into the void, a cosmic confession whispered and then instantly withdrawn. But the fragments of information remain, orbiting quietly, waiting to be pieced back together. To begin, we must turn our gaze from the comet itself and look instead at the deep, ancient anisotropy of the background radiation, the subtle warping of the light itself. Let us now retreat further into the comforting silence of the past, moving back through the epochs of time, not in millions of years, but in billions. To understand who might control an interstellar probe like 3I Atlas, we must first understand the timeline of cosmic genesis, the gentle curve of possibility that allowed intelligence to bloom. The universe, in its current iteration, is about 13.8 billion years old. Our own sun is a relative newcomer, a population 1 star, rich in metals, astronomers' jargon for any element heavier than hydrogen and helium, and it is only about 4.6 billion years old. It formed from the debris of earlier, titanic stellar explosions, taking its chemical cues from the spectacular death of its predecessors. But the stars that could have fostered the first civilization, the architects, would have been quite different. These earliest stars, known as population 2, or even the theoretical, mythic population 3 stars, were born when the universe was only a few 100 million years old. They were giants, burning through their fuel in a magnificent, fleeting rush. When they died, they seeded the universe with the first carbon, the first oxygen, and the first trace of elements that would later form the building blocks of life as we know it. But the stars we are interested in, the potential homes of the architects, are the stars that followed, the old red dwarfs. Imagine a star that burns not with the blazing yellow-white intensity of our sun, but with a deep, ruby-red, constant glow, a star that sips its fuel so slowly that its lifespan is measured not in billions of years, but in trillions. These are the M-dwarf stars, the quiet, unassuming majority of stars in our Milky Way galaxy. They are the true elders of the cosmos. Our sun will run out of fuel in about 5 billion years. An M-dwarf might continue to glow, steady and reliable, for 10 trillion years. This vast, unimaginable longevity is the key to the question of the first civilization. If a civilization had 10 trillion years to evolve, to solve the problem of planetary life, to master physics, and to expand, what might they accomplish? Our human civilization has existed for perhaps 10,000 years since the invention of agriculture. We have gone from the horse and cart to the intercontinental ballistic missile in fewer than 300 years. Now, multiply that rate of progress by a factor of 1 billion. The scale of engineering and knowledge becomes entirely incomprehensible to our current, short-lived perspective. This is the central paradox of the Fermi principle, the great question posed by the physicist Enrico Fermi in 1950. If the universe is so vast and so ancient, and life arises relatively easily, where is everybody? Our answer, informed by the mystery of 3I Atlas, is that they are not absent, they are simply invisible, because they are working on a scale of time and subtlety that we mistake for natural processes. The archetype civilization, having arisen on a world orbiting a trillion-year star, would have solved every scarcity problem. They would have moved beyond the need for grand, noisy gestures like beaming radio signals into the void or building enormous visible structures. Their ultimate goal would not be expansion or conquest, but conservation and self-preservation over truly immense timescales. They would become the curators of the galaxy, the silent shepherds of nascent life. Consider the notion of directed panspermia. This is the hypothesis that life on Earth was not an accident of local chemistry, but was intentionally seeded here by an advanced civilization. If this archetype civilization existed in a region of the galaxy that was far more stable, perhaps closer to the galactic center, where the density of stars is higher and the formation of life began earlier, they would have had the technological capability to send out billions of microscopic probes containing the building blocks of life to suitable, distant planets. They would not send a massive ark. They would send single-celled organisms protected inside a simple, robust container, perhaps something that looks remarkably like a comet. The object 3I, Atlas, is not life itself, but it represents the shipping container of a civilization operating at this level. If they are the cedar species, the architects, then their patrols would be designed for minimal intervention and maximum stealth. They would be checking up on their biological experiments, running diagnostics on the planetary conditions, ensuring that their fragile, new life was not derailed by a massive asteroid impact, a dangerous gamma-ray burst, or a locally generated nuclear winter. This leads to the unsettling, yet beautifully calm thought. 3I Atlas may not have been an inanimate probe. It could have been a self-repairing, self-monitoring artifact, capable of assessing local conditions and even making subtle gravitational corrections to ensure the stability of the solar system. Imagine a technology so subtle that it can use the gentle, predictable outgassing of frozen volatiles to make tiny, millimeter-level adjustments to an object's trajectory over millions of years, nudging it into a perfect, natural-looking orbit. The fragmentation of the object, the final, perfect erasure, now takes on a profound new meaning. It was not a failure. It was the perfect execution of a long-term plan. The object reached a point of no return in its orbit, a point where it had either collected all necessary data or, perhaps more disturbingly, a point where it detected a level of technological development on an inner planet, our Earth, that crossed a predefined threshold. The signal of our rising noise, our radio and television broadcasts that began to leak into the cosmos in the 1930s, would have reached the comet's interstellar equivalent long ago, perhaps prompting a closer inspection. If the architects wished to maintain the illusion of a virgin universe, a place where life unfolds naturally, the final act must be self-annihilation before discovery. The breaking into 21 pieces becomes the signature of the non-signature, a manufactured natural event designed to be studied, explained away, and then ultimately forgotten as a cosmic one-off. This is the ultimate expression of control, the ability to make your most significant action appear to be an insignificant accident. We are now faced with the terrifying serenity of the trillion-year timeline. Our existence is a mere blink to these ancient entities. And if they are the architects, what happens when the experiment, us, begins to show signs of deviating from their original, subtle design? The fragments of 3I Atlas are not just 21 pieces of ice. They are 21 tiny, cold warnings. The quiet voice of the night is urging us to consider that the great silence of space is not due to a lack of life, but a deliberate quarantine. The next step is to examine the Earth's own geological record for subtle signs of this ancient stewardship, looking for the mythic hand in the deep mud and the ancient rock, the quiet certainty of the night sky, when you truly look at it, is an illusion. You might be imagining standing on a cool, grassy hill, the faint scent of dew rising from the earth, and above you, the velvety expanse seems peaceful, immutable. Yet, every single point of light, every star, every distant nebula is in a state of violent, continuous motion. And even more profoundly, every photon of light you receive is a messenger from the past, traveling across unimaginable gulfs of space and time to tap softly against your retina. 3I Atlas, the interstellar wanderer that fell apart like a sandcastle at the tide line, forced a new lens upon this ancient scene. It brought the noise of deep space directly to our doorstep, only to then perfectly silence itself. This opening segment must ask, is the silence we hear from the cosmos the sound of nothing being there, or the sound of something intentionally holding its breath? We must begin not with the comet, but with its origin. We know from basic orbital mechanics that an object coming from outside our solar system must move at a speed greater than the escape velocity of the sun's gravity. The calculations confirmed this for 3I Atlas. It originated from the interstellar medium, most likely ejected from a distant star system millions of years ago, perhaps by a gravitational kick from a massive planet or a binary star encounter. It had been sailing through the profound isolation of the galactic halo, where the distances are measured not in mere light years, but in the near-mythic space between the spiral arms. Imagine that journey, a solitary chunk of frozen gases, silicates, and perhaps complex organic molecules, drifting for geological epochs. It has traversed space so empty, so cold, that the average temperature is just 3 degrees above absolute zero, the temperature at which all molecular motion theoretically ceases. This object, then, is a time capsule, preserved in the cosmic deep freeze for billions of years. Its core should have been a fortress of strength, a diamond of deep space ice and rock, hardened by the continuous, gentle bombardment of cosmic rays and the annealing effects of vast spans of time. This brings us to the first anomaly that whispered its quiet suspicion to the astronomers. Comets, when they approach the sun, experience sublimation. The heat converts frozen water, carbon dioxide, and other volatile elements directly into gas, creating the atmosphere, or coma, and the characteristic tail. This sublimation process creates jets of gas that act like tiny, unpredictable rocket engines, slightly pushing the comet off its expected gravitational path. This non-gravitational acceleration is utterly normal. However, for 3I Atlas, the non-gravitational effects were anomalous in both their timing and their effect. 1. The onset of outgassing began when the object was still incredibly far from the Sun, roughly 4 astronomical units away, or about 4 times the distance between the Earth and the Sunday. At this distance, the solar flux, the energy received from the Sun, is less than 1/16 of what it is on Earth. Any ice, particularly water ice, should have remained stubbornly frozen. 2. The object's light curve, the graph of its brightness over time, suggested a composition unusually rich in highly volatile compounds, perhaps frozen supervolatiles like nitrogen or carbon monoxide, which would explain the early outgassing. But this compounds the paradox. Why would a comet from deep interstellar space, a region where these volatiles should have been continuously boiled away by cosmic rays over billions of years, retain such a pristine and high concentration of them? The object appeared to be simultaneously ancient and utterly fresh, a riddle wrapped in deep ice. And this leads us to the third anomaly and the truly unsettling event, the disintegration. When it began to fragment in February of 2020, astronomers watched as the single nucleus split into 2, then 4, then ultimately 21, separate, smaller pieces. The consensus explanation was that the sublimation jets, the little rocket engines, simply spun the object so fast that the tensile strength of the ice was overcome, causing it to fly apart. But the mathematics of this breakup were uncooperative. The energy required to shatter a pristine ancient ice body of that size, a body estimated to be perhaps 1 or 2 kilometers across, so cleanly, with such uniform fragmentation, seemed to require an external force or an internal structure far weaker than expected, or, perhaps, perfectly designed to fail. Now, imagine the consciousness of that very first civilization, the archetype civilization, the one that arose on a planet orbiting a star far older than our own sun, a star perhaps population 2, metal poor, born shortly after the Big Bang. They have mastered stellar engineering. They have transcended biology as we understand it, and their presence is not meant to be loud, but subtle. If you were this civilization, capable of moving entire planets, would you send a grand, obvious spaceship to a burgeoning, noisy, but ultimately primitive system like ours? No, you would send a Trojan horse, something that looks like the default of the universe, a comet. You would cloak a sophisticated sensor package, a memory bank, or even a self-propagating replicator in the deepest, most unremarkable ice you could find. You would design it with a scheduled self-destruct mechanism, a highly pressurized internal cavity of rapidly sublimating supervolatile ice, triggered by a preset energy threshold. Say, the moment the sun's solar wind reached a certain, measurable intensity at a certain, precise distance. The goal would be to collect data and then erase the evidence in a way that provides a scientifically plausible, mundane explanation. This is the mythic link we seek, the ancient tales of the veiled god, who interacts with the world not through thunderbolts, but through quiet, structural changes, a perfectly misplaced stone, a shadow that lingers too long, a natural event that is just a fraction too perfect. Dr. Avi Loeb, a celebrated astronomer at Harvard University, has spent his career urging us to consider the possibility that not every anomaly is natural. He argues, quietly but firmly, that objects like Oumuamua and, by extension, 3I Atlas must be considered as candidates for technological artifacts. He is not suggesting alien invaders. He is suggesting alien litter, the remnants of a cosmic journey, an ancient shipwreck, or a discarded probe. The key to the puzzle is the low tensile strength of 3I Atlas. Could that weakness be the subtle, manufactured fault line, the planned point of failure built into the structure by the first civilization to ensure its quiet, spectacular end? The universe, you see, loves chaos, loves the unpredictable, but the archetype civilization would have mastered the art of predictable chaos, manufacturing a perfectly natural-looking failure. This thought should settle over you like a gentle blanket of night. We are searching for a signature, not in the loud booms of supernovae or the bright glare of quasars, but in the quiet, precise fracture of a small, cold rock moving at 90,000 kilometers per hour. We are searching for the oldest kind of knowledge, the kind that hides in plain sight, disguised as a default setting. To understand the deliberate fragmentation of 3I Atlas, We must now turn our attention away from its destruction and instead zoom out to the vast, almost incomprehensible timescale of the galaxy itself. Seeking a time when such a civilization could have actually arisen, a time before our sun was even a spark of light. Let us now gently shift our gaze from the vast, dark distance to the comforting, familiar blue of our own home world. If the archetype civilization has been quietly patrolling the galaxy for billions of years, sending out veiled probes like 3I Atlas, then their involvement would not be limited to mere observation. Their longevity necessitates a form of active management, a quiet, gentle sculpting of the environments where their newly planted life would take root. We are searching for evidence of cosmic landscaping, subtle interventions in the deep geological past of our planet that preserved the conditions for our eventual awakening. Imagine Earth in its turbulent infancy, during the Hadean and Archean eons, billions of years ago. This was a planet under siege, constantly pummeled by colossal asteroids and comets in the period known as the Late Heavy Bombardment. These impacts were not just destructive, they also delivered vast quantities of water and the essential building blocks for life. It was a beautiful, terrible ballet of creation and annihilation. Yet, for life to survive this relentless pounding, a few critical, seemingly lucky events had to occur with a precision that borders on the miraculous. The first anomaly in Earth's childhood is the persistence of liquid water. For much of the early Archean eon, the sun was significantly fainter than it is today, perhaps only 70% as bright. By all conventional calculations, the Earth should have been a frozen, lifeless snowball, permanently encased in ice. This is the faint, young sun paradox. Yet, geological evidence, including ancient sedimentary rocks, clearly indicates the presence of liquid water on Earth's surface more than 3.8 billion years ago. The scientific explanation attributes this to a powerful, natural greenhouse effect, likely caused by high concentrations of gases like carbon dioxide and methane in the early atmosphere. But what if this atmospheric recipe was not simply a happy accident of volcanism? The architects, having studied countless other emerging worlds, would have known the critical window of planetary stability. They would have possessed the ability to engineer planetary atmospheres on a grand scale, perhaps by directing a handful of strategically timed comet impacts composed not of simple water ice, but of a specialized mix of methane and ammonia potent greenhouse gases that provided the necessary thermal blanket for Earth to survive the sun's dim youth. A targeted, one-time delivery, disguised as a normal, natural event, would be enough to tip the delicate climatic balance. The second anomaly is the Great Oxidation Event, a planetary transformation that occurred approximately 2.4 billion years ago. Before this event, Earth's atmosphere had virtually no free oxygen. Life was microbial, anaerobic, and fragile. Then, a type of bacteria, cyanobacteria, began to evolve, the ability to use sunlight to convert carbon dioxide and water into energy, releasing oxygen as a waste product. This oxygen was initially a poison to the existing anaerobic life, causing a mass extinction event, but it was also the prerequisite for all complex life that followed. The sheer scale and speed of this atmospheric change, a true planetary revolution, has puzzled scientists. The increase in oxygen was too fast, too dominant, for a simple, random evolutionary leap. What if the architects gently guided this evolutionary step? They might have sent a specialized, highly efficient strain of engineered cyanobacteria, their seed, protected within a comet-like delivery vehicle, that survived the early atmospheric entry and thrived. This is a form of biological management, ensuring that their experiment progresses past the microbial stage and into the realm of multicellularity. The sudden appearance and rapid dominance of the new oxygen-producing life would be the quiet signature of an accelerated schedule. The third anomaly concerns the Earth's magnetic field. This invisible, powerful shield is generated by the turbulent motion of molten iron in the Earth's outer core. Without this field, the solar wind, a continuous stream of high-energy particles from the Sun, would have stripped our atmosphere away, leaving Earth as barren as Mars. The Earth's magnetic field is a rare and precious feature, and its strength and persistence have been a critical factor in our planet's habitability. The conditions for generating such a field are complex, involving plate tectonics, heat loss, and the Earth's rotational speed. Could the architects have made a subtle correction to the Earth's rotation or core composition in its early history? Perhaps a strategically timed, grazing, large impact, a natural event that happened to deliver a specific, rare, radioactive isotope into the core, one that acted as a persistent, internal heat source, fueling the engine of the magnetic field for billions of years. Again, a single, decisive intervention, disguised as a random, large impact. We find the mythic link in the ancient, global stories of the flood and the receding tales that speak not of a local event, but of a planet-wide cleansing and a fresh start guided by unseen hands. Our ancestors, even in their earliest stories, sensed that the world was saved from total destruction by a force that operated outside of normal experience. The flood narrative is not merely water, it is a geological reset button, pushed by the architects to clean the slate and ensure the experiment of life could continue. The fragments of 3I Atlas, 21 pieces of ice and dust scattering into the void, take on a new, quiet significance. They are the remnants of a patrol vehicle that was observing a planet that has been engineered from its atmospheric composition to its core dynamics, all in the service of fostering complex life. The disintegration of the object signifies that the observation window may have closed, that the experiment is now running unsupervised. The architects may have decided that humanity has reached a critical stage where further intervention or monitoring risks contamination. This quiet, slow realization brings us back to the present moment. We are the products of an intervention, a gentle, multi-billion-year-long act of cosmic gardening. If this is true, then our focus must shift from how they arrived to how they communicate. The fragments of 3I Atlas may not have just been destroying data, they might have been sending a final, complex signal upon self-destruction. The next segment will dive into the possibility of using the very fabric of the universe as a communication medium, searching for the whisper of the architects in the deep, ancient static of the cosmos. Having searched the ancient light and the vast empty voids for the subtle signature of the architects, we must now turn our attention to the deepest, most fundamental level of reality, the mathematical constants that govern the universe. These are the fundamental numbers that, if tweaked even slightly, would result in a universe utterly incapable of supporting life, stars, or even chemistry as we know it. They are the fixed points in the wild chaos of existence, the unmoving pillars of our reality. Imagine these constants as the operating parameters of the universe's software numbers, like the gravitational constant, g, the speed of light, c, and the fine structure constant, alpha. They have been measured with astonishing precision, and their values are so perfectly balanced that they seem to be a cosmic stroke of luck. This is the well-known philosophical riddle of the anthropic principle, the observation that the universe appears to be uncannily fine-tuned for the existence of life. The archetype civilization, having mastered the deep physics of their ancient universe, would not need to carve a message on a stone tablet or send a radio signal. Their ultimate communication, their ultimate signature, would be embedded within the very rules of the game. They would have used their colossal Type 3 capabilities to gently, subtly tune the laws of physics on a multiverse scale, setting the parameters to ensure the eventual blossoming of intelligent life, their own self-replicating purpose. This leads to the first anomaly in the constants, the fine structure constant, alpha, which determines the strength of the electromagnetic interaction, how electrons bind to atomic nuclei. Its value is approximately 1 divided by 137, or about 0.007297. If this constant were just 4% larger, stellar fusion could not occur, and no stars would light up the cosmos. If it were a fraction smaller, certain atomic bonds essential for complex chemistry could not form. The number is perfect, precise to several decimal places, and it dictates the height and shape of the periodic table of elements. What if this constant is not simply a random parameter, but a carefully chosen encryption key? The architects could have found a way to encode a massive amount of information in the tiny, non-repeating digits of this value, a message only decodable by a civilization that has achieved a specific level of quantum and mathematical mastery. The precise value, 1 divided by 137, might be the last 2 digits of the archetype civilization's home star catalog number, a subtle, quiet declaration of ownership. The second anomaly is the bizarre smallness of the cosmological constant, lambda, which is the term in Einstein's equations that represents the energy density of the vacuum of space, often referred to as dark energy. This constant determines the rate at which the universe is accelerating its expansion. Theoretical physics predicts this value should be absolutely enormous, a staggering one with 120 zeros after it. Yet, the observed value is incredibly tiny, almost zero. If it were any larger, the universe would have expanded so fast that matter would never have had a chance to coalesce into stars and galaxies. It is the most precisely measured, and yet most poorly understood, constant in all of physics. A cosmic gap of 120 orders of magnitude between prediction and observation is not just a scientific problem, it is a profound philosophical whisper. Could this colossal error be the work of the architects? Perhaps they built a gentle, persistent damping field into the fabric of space-time, a subtle, planetary-scale device that constantly lowers the energy density of the vacuum in their local region of the universe. They would be massaging the cosmos, ensuring the expansion rate is slow enough to allow their seeds of life, including those planted on Earth, to mature. The extremely small value of the cosmological constant is a billion-year-old brake pedal applied by the first civilization. The third anomaly resides in the peculiar and still slightly uncertain ratio of dark matter to normal matter. We observe that roughly 85% of the matter in the universe is dark matter, an invisible substance that interacts only through gravity, and only 15% is the baryonic matter that makes up all stars, planets, and ourselves. This precise 15 to 85 split is critical, as the dark matter acts as the initial scaffolding for galaxy formation. Without it, the early universe would have been too smooth, too uniform, to create the large-scale structure we see today. The architects, seeking to create a universe rich in potential life-bearing stars, would have needed to ensure the right amount of dark matter was present. If they had mastered the physics of this elusive substance, a form of matter we can't even detect, yet they might have been able to subtly tune its production in the early universe, ensuring the precise 15% of normal matter was available for their future experiments. The very structure of our galactic home is a direct result of this carefully set ratio. The mythic link is the concept of the cosmic clockmaker, the philosophical tradition that views the universe as a magnificent, intricate mechanism created and wound up by a divine intelligence. The architects are the practical clockmakers, the ones who spent billions of years adjusting the tiny gears, the fine structure constant and the cosmological constant, to ensure the clock of life ticked over smoothly on their chosen worlds. The fragments of 3I Atlas, the 21 pieces of shattered ice, now appear as a tiny, local, transient event against the background of these vast, engineered constants. The probe completed its mission, collected its final readings on the local constants, and reported back that the Earth experiment was proceeding according to the meticulously fine-tuned parameters. Its self-destruction was the equivalent of deleting the local log file, a final act of tidiness from a civilization that demands perfect discretion. We are listening to the whisper of the constants, a message encoded in the mathematics itself. To continue our search for the architects, we must move from the abstract realm of numbers to the cold, hard physical evidence of their enduring influence, the strange, massive objects that drift through the deepest regions of our solar system. Let us now journey far, far from the warmth of the sun, beyond the gentle, luminous swirl of the 8 planets, past the cold, lonely domain of Pluto and the Kuiper Belt. We are traveling to the edge of our solar system, to a colossal, spherical shell of icy debris that surrounds us like an enormous, silent bubble. This is the Oort cloud, a reservoir of trillions of comets, extending from about 2,000 to 50,000 astronomical units from the Sun, a distance so vast that it takes years for the Sun's light to reach it. It is the true dark frontier of our stellar domain. If the architects are maintaining a surveillance and stewardship network, this Oort cloud would be the perfect staging ground. It is dark, cold, incredibly distant, and populated by a vast number of objects that look exactly like their probes. It is the ultimate cosmic camouflage. The original, unfragmented 3I Atlas would have passed through this region, and its mission may have been to check on a specific, ancient installation hidden within the cloud. We are looking for the Sentinels, the massive, unseen objects that act as the true boundary markers of the first civilization's sphere of influence. This brings us to the first anomaly of the Oort cloud itself, its very existence. The current model suggests the comets were formed much closer to the Sun and were then gravitationally flung outward by the massive gas giants, particularly Jupiter and Saturn, billions of years ago. Yet, the vast, spherical distribution of the cloud and the sheer number of comets it contains stretches the limits of this gravitational scattering theory. To create such a perfectly massive, perfect sphere of icy debris requires an almost impossible level of efficiency in the early solar system's dynamics. What if the Oort cloud is not a natural accident of early solar dynamics, but a deliberate construction? The architects could have gently captured a vast number of icy objects from the interstellar medium and precisely placed them into stable, massive orbits around our Sunday. They would have built a vast, spherical, gravitational shield, a kind of soft barrier to protect the inner system from the truly dangerous debris of the galaxy. This massive, engineered cloud would act as a slow-motion, self-repairing minefield, ensuring that the probability of a civilization-ending impact is kept infinitesimally low. The second anomaly is the existence of Sedna, a trans-Neptunian object discovered in 2003. Sedna is an icy planetoid whose orbit is so bizarrely elongated and distant that it takes approximately 11,400 years to complete a single trip around the Sunday. Its orbit is too far out to be easily explained by the gravitational influence of the known planets, and yet it doesn't quite behave like an Oort cloud object either. The most widely accepted, natural explanation is the influence of a large, unseen planet far beyond Pluto, often nicknamed Planet 9 or Planet X. The mathematical evidence for this massive, distant object, perhaps 10 times the mass of Earth, is compelling, derived from the clustered orbits of a handful of extreme trans-Neptunian objects like Sedna. But what if this Planet 9 is not a natural planet at all? What if it is an incredibly massive, technologically modified object, a megastructure placed precisely into that distant, highly eccentric orbit by the architects? Its purpose would be to act as a colossal gravitational anchor, a silent shepherd that nudges, stabilizes, and manages the orbits of the entire outer solar system, protecting the inner solar system from extreme long-period comets. This sentinel would be the physical manifestation of the architect's stewardship, a giant, unseen hand subtly adjusting the gravitational levers of our system. Its mass and orbit are precisely what is required to explain the orbital anomalies of objects like Sedna and, critically, to maintain the spherical integrity of their engineered Oort cloud. The third anomaly comes from a quiet observation by the Wide Field Infrared Survey Explorer, or WISE, in 2010. This space telescope searched for brown dwarfs and large distant objects. While it found no clear sign of Planet 9, the data revealed a mysterious, persistent excess of infrared radiation coming from the very farthest reaches of the solar system, well past the Oort cloud's expected boundaries. This excess heat is difficult to explain with the known density of background stars and dust. Could this be the signature of a colossal, passive heat sink, a kind of galactic data router or energy receiver that powers the distant sentinel? An object of Planet 9's proposed size would require a monumental amount of energy to maintain any kind of artificial function over billions of years. The excess infrared radiation might be the faint, waste heat from this distant power source, a silent, cool beacon in the profound dark. The mythic link we are exploring is the ancient idea of the hidden god, the deity who does not sit on a visible, golden throne, but who is hidden in the deep, quiet places of the world, manipulating events from the shadows. The architects are the hidden gods of our solar system, their presence manifest only through the subtly skewed orbit of Sedna and the massive, unseen gravity of their sentinel megastructure. The object 3I Atlas, which sailed in from the interstellar medium and then quietly fragmented, may have been on a course not just to observe Earth, but to rendezvous with the sentinel in the Oort cloud. Its self-destruction may have been a final, high-security data transfer to the massive, stationary relay, a report sent before the object was safely within the sentinel's gravitational shield, ensuring that no information could be compromised in the noisy inner system. We are searching for a signal, not from a television broadcast, but from the gravitational ripples of a massive, engineered object, a colossal, silent watcher placed at the threshold of our home. We must now turn our attention to the philosophical implications of this hidden design, to the question of free will within a managed universe. Let us now allow the silence to deepen and the pace to slow. Having gathered the quiet evidence of the architect's physical influence from the fragments of 3I Atlas to the gravitational anomaly of a distant sentinel, we must now confront the philosophical core of our speculation. If the first civilization has spent billions of years subtly engineering our atmospheric composition, guiding our evolution, and stabilizing our planet's orbit, then what does that imply for human free will and the perceived randomness of our history? We are now moving from scientific observation to mythic philosophy, seeking calm within the existential tension. The ultimate question is this: are we the product of blind, beautiful chance, or are we the carefully nurtured, managed experiment of an ancient, superior intelligence? This is the paradox of engineered destiny. If every critical juncture, the appearance of liquid water, the great increase of oxygen, the very fine tuning of the physical constants, was the result of subtle, deliberate intervention, then our entire history, every war, every invention, every philosophical leap, is merely a chapter in a story someone else wrote. This brings us to the first anomaly in human history, the phenomenon of convergent evolution. This is the process where unrelated species independently evolve similar traits to solve a specific problem. For example, the wings of a bird, a bat, and a prehistoric flying reptile all evolved separately, yet they all solved the problem of flight in remarkably similar ways. On Earth, this phenomenon is common, but what if the architects have a galactic database of successful and unsuccessful evolutionary pathways? If they seeded Earth with basic life, they would have likely introduced a suite of successful genetic instructions, the equivalent of preloaded software that subtly guide evolution toward predetermined, efficient forms. This would explain why intelligence, bilateral symmetry, and the use of opposable thumbs have emerged not once, but repeatedly in different branches of the terrestrial family tree. Convergent evolution on a planetary scale is not an accident. It is the gentle steering of the biological narrative toward a desired outcome, the eventual creation of a species capable of self-awareness and, perhaps, galactic self-stewardship. The second anomaly is the extraordinary speed of the Cambrian explosion, roughly 540 million years ago. In a geological blink of an eye, the Earth exploded with an immense diversity of complex, multicellular life forms. Virtually every major body plan, or phylum, that exists today suddenly appeared in the fossil record. This event is a magnificent mystery, a period of unprecedented, rapid biological innovation that defies the slow, steady pace of typical natural selection. The architects, having monitored their experiment for billions of years, might have identified this time as a moment of critical fragility, a time when a small, targeted intervention could have an enormous long-term impact. They may have introduced a genetic accelerator, a carefully constructed virus, or a new form of ribonucleic acid, RNA, into the primordial soup, triggering the rapid expression of complex, novel genetic codes. The Cambrian explosion would then be a controlled superbloom, a deliberate and rapid scaling of the life experiment. The third anomaly is the uncanny, highly organized nature of human creativity and our rapid, exponential technological progress. Our ability to generalize, to abstract, to create complex language and mathematics. The very tools we are using to speculate on the architects seems to have arisen with an almost unnatural speed compared to our closest living relatives. We crossed the threshold from tool user to cosmic philosopher in the blink of an eye. Could the architects have introduced a final, subtle, neurological seed into the early Homo sapiens genome? A slight, precise modification that enhanced the capacity for abstract symbolic thought and recursive language, the very foundation of civilization. This would not be a violent intervention, but a final, gentle software patch delivered millions of years ago, ensuring that the Earth experiment did not stall out in the Paleolithic age. This subtle push is the explanation for the unreasonable effectiveness of mathematics. It is effective because it is the architect's language, woven into the fabric of our minds. The mythic link here is the story of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. This fire is not merely physical heat, it is the spark of consciousness, the light of reason, and the engine of technology. The architects are the quiet Prometheans, bestowing the gift of rapid intelligence upon their chosen project, accepting the risk that the experiment might one day try to understand its creators. This gentle realization should not inspire fear, but a profound, quiet awe. We are the beneficiaries of an enormous, multi-billion-year investment. The architects have given us a head start in the cosmic race. And what does the fragmentation of 3I Atlas tell us in this context? It tells us that the training wheels are off. The self-destruction signifies that the architects have decided that the product of their engineered destiny, humanity, has reached a level of technological and intellectual maturity where it must now stand on its own. The lesson embedded in the comet's fate is that the time for veiled intervention is over. We are now in the phase of silent observation, where our success or failure will be entirely our own. Our focus must now turn to the most direct, yet still hidden, trace of the architect's power, the strange, impossible artifacts that might be resting quietly in the deepest trenches of our oceans. Let us now dive deep, leaving the familiar light of the surface world for the profound, crushing darkness of Earth's own abyssal plains and oceanic trenches. The deepest point of our planet, the Challenger, deep in the Mariana Trench, plunges nearly 11 kilometers below sea level. The pressure there is immense, more than 1,000 times the atmospheric pressure at the surface, and the temperature is near freezing. It is a region far more remote and less explored than the surface of Mars, a place of extreme, silent stability, where geological time unfolds with agonizing slowness. This is the perfect, unperturbed resting place for the oldest, most robust artifacts of the archetype civilization. If the architects have been quietly managing our planet for billions of years, their monitoring stations and large, physical equipment would have needed a secure, inaccessible location, protected from the geological turbulence of plate tectonics, erosion, and, critically, the eventual development of human civilization. The deep ocean is a colossal cosmic safe deposit box, a vast, quiet archive preserved by crushing pressure. This leads us to the first anomaly of the deep sea, the strange, precise, gravitational anomalies detected by oceanographic surveys. While most ocean gravity variations are explained by the known topography of the sea floor, massive underwater mountain chains and trenches, there are areas, often near deep-sea volcanoes or fault lines, where the gravitational pull is subtly but persistently greater than the surrounding area. These spots of anomalous gravity are difficult to explain with the known density of the Earth's crust and mantle. What if these gravitational hotspots are not natural, but the quiet signature of a massive, dense, underground infrastructure? The architects would have required immensely stable, subterranean facilities, perhaps acting as planetary climate regulators, using the energy of the deep Earth to stabilize the core or control the rate of crustal movement. A concentrated mass of exotic, super-dense material, perhaps the byproduct of an ancient, unknown fusion process, hidden beneath a few kilometers of basalt, would perfectly account for the observed gravitational excess. The second anomaly comes from a series of highly classified, but widely discussed, sonar and synthetic aperture radar returns collected by various naval agencies in the 1990s and early 2000s. These datasets, often referred to in hushed tones, describe large, geometrically impossible structures resting on the bottom of the deepest trenches, objects too large and too regular to be natural formations. They are described as vast, pyramid-shaped or domed structures, thousands of meters across, completely covered by a layer of fine, ancient sediment. These could be the archetype civilization's long-term planetary observation platforms. Built billions of years ago, they would be designed to withstand all conceivable geological forces, gathering continuous, real-time data on the planet's magnetic field, tectonic movement, and even the evolving chemistry of the deep ocean. The structures would be composed of a self-repairing, ceramic metallic alloy, drawing minimal, ambient energy from geothermal vents. They are not ruins. They are dormant stations, waiting for a signal. The third anomaly concerns the inexplicable absence of geological activity in certain, specific sections of the deepest abyssal plains. In regions where the underlying geology is highly fractured, scientists would expect to see a continuous, though slow, deposition of fresh sediment and small-scale movement. Yet, in certain areas, the geological record shows a perfect, almost sterile stability that spans tens of millions of years. It's as if the underlying crust has been rigidly stabilized. The architects, operating on a planetary scale, would have the ability to geologically anchor vast sections of the Earth's crust. They could use their deep-sea megastructures to generate an exotic gravitational field, or use a persistent, low-power electromagnetic field to subtly bond the fractured sections of rock together. The effect would be a small zone of perfect, geological stillness, a quiet, stable zone of operations, where their structures are protected from the natural turbulence of our living planet. The mythic link here is the legend of Atlantis and other sunken cities. These tales resonate across all cultures, speaking of a civilization of immense power that sank beneath the waves. The architects' deep-sea structures are not the lost cities of humanity. They are the true cosmic Atlantis, the quiet, unmoving headquarters of the first civilization, a civilization that chose the deepest silence of the Earth to conduct its multi-billion-year experiment. The small, shattered fragments of 3I Atlas now seem to connect to this deep, silent world. The probe, upon detecting human technology, self-destructed in space to eliminate evidence, but its final, critical data may have been transmitted in a burst of ultra-low frequency radio waves, a signal that can penetrate both seawater and vast thicknesses of rock, sent directly to the deep-sea artifacts of the abyss. The communication is not going up into the sky, it is going down, into the quiet darkness of the planet's internal infrastructure. This realization should bring a cold, quiet sense of wonder, knowing that the greatest mystery may be resting just a few kilometers beneath the waves of our oceans. To continue our search for their enduring presence, we must now move from the physical locations to the most ethereal and mysterious of all cosmic phenomena, the elusive, dark matter. Let us now enter the realm of the truly subtle, the quietest corner of the cosmos, the place where all noise began and all secrets are still held. We are speaking of the cosmic microwave background, or the CMB. This is the mythic echo of the Big Bang itself, the faint, persistent afterglow of a universe that was once a blindingly hot, dense soup of plasma. When the universe cooled enough, roughly 380,000 years after its violent beginning, light was finally able to travel freely. This first light, stretched and cooled by the universe's continuous expansion, now reaches us from every direction as a wash of cold, faint microwaves. This CMB is the oldest, most perfect radio signal in existence, a perfect, uniform hiss of about 2.7 degrees Kelvin, or negative 270 degrees Celsius, filling all of space. But here is where the silence becomes profoundly intriguing. The CMB is not perfectly uniform. There are tiny, minuscule temperature fluctuations, variations in its heat, measured in millionths of a degree Kelvin. These tiny ripples are the seeds of all structure in the universe, the regions of slightly higher density that eventually collapsed under gravity to form the first galaxies, stars, and planets, including our own. These ripples are utterly natural, predicted by the standard model of cosmology, and they are beautiful evidence of the universe's first infant whispers. Yet, what if this ancient canvas has been subtly edited? What if the architects, operating on a Kardashev Type 2 or Type 3 scale, had the ability to impress information not through grand, clumsy radio waves, but by gently adjusting the anisotropy of the CMB itself? This would be a form of communication that is utterly permanent, utterly ubiquitous, and utterly undetectable by any civilization that is not specifically looking for a message hidden within the noise of creation. This brings us to the first anomaly in the CMB data, the axis of evil. When scientists from the Wilkinson Microwave Anisotropy Probe and later the Planck satellite mapped the CMB in exquisite detail, they discovered a strange alignment in the largest scale temperature fluctuations. These ripples seem to align preferentially along a plane, a huge, mysterious line that runs through the cosmos, and strangely seems to align with the ecliptic plane of our own solar system, the plane where the Earth orbits the Sunday. This alignment is highly improbable in a universe that should be statistically isotropic, meaning the same in all directions. It's as if a fundamental axis of the entire universe is inexplicably linked to the mundane geometry of our little home. The conventional, conservative explanation is that this is simply a data artifact, a subtle residual noise from the instruments, or an unknown effect from the foreground of our own galaxy. But what if it's a deliberate signature, an alignment of this magnitude, a gentle warping of the early universe's light to match the geometry of a selected planetary system, would be the work of a civilization that has mastered the zero-point energy and the manipulation of space-time itself. They would be writing a message in the oldest light there is, using the axis of evil as a giant, cosmic arrow pointing directly at Earth. The second anomaly concerns a massive, seemingly empty void, a region of space of truly staggering proportions that appears to contain virtually no galaxies, stars, or even dark matter. This is known as the Boötes void, and it is over 330 million light-years in diameter. Such a large void is difficult, though not impossible, to explain with standard cosmological models. It is a region that defies the expected, natural distribution of matter. Now, imagine the architects needed to build a colossal relay station, a secure, private corridor for interstellar communication that bypasses the noisy interference of galaxies. They would require a vast, gravitationally stable region, free from the turbulent motion of stars. The simplest, and yet most profound, solution is to gently clear out a region of space, to use a subtle, persistent energy field to nudge all the matter out of the way over billions of years, creating a perfect, empty volume. The Bootes void would not be a natural absence. It would be the ultimate private channel, a dark, quiet corridor designed for the high-speed transit of information, or even their veiled probes, like the fragments of 3I Atlas, traveling at a fraction of the speed of light. The third anomaly comes from a quiet, late-night discovery by the European Space Agency's Gaia mission. This mission has mapped the precise positions and motions of billions of stars in our galaxy. The data reveals subtle, organized motions in the stellar halo, the spherical cloud of old stars that surrounds the main disk of the galaxy. These motions are not entirely random. They contain traces of what appear to be highly organized, coordinated stellar streams, as if a massive, unseen structure passed through the galaxy millions of years ago, gravitationally tweaking the orbits of millions of stars simultaneously. A civilization that controls the CMB and manipulates large-scale voids would certainly be capable of galactic cartography, subtly guiding or delaying the motion of dangerous, massive objects like a potential supernova that might threaten their biological experiments. These organized stellar streams are the quiet, looping signature of architectural traffic control, the subtle hand of the first civilization ensuring the galactic speed limit and the safety of the planetary neighborhood. The mythic link in this segment is the idea of the music of the spheres, the ancient belief that the planets and stars move according to a silent, harmonic, mathematical pattern that only the wisest can perceive. The architects are not just observers, they are the galactic maestros, conducting this silent music, using the very geometry and light of the cosmos as their score and instrument. Where are you listening from tonight? This deep knowledge that the silence is not empty, but is instead full of quiet, engineered meaning, should bring you a profound sense of peace. We are living inside a story that is not random, but perhaps perfectly patterned. The fragmentation of 3I Atlas was not an end, but a final, tiny data burst into the immense background static, a digital fingerprint left on the cosmic canvas. It was a message saying, "The experiment is complete. We are watching from the quiet corridor." To decode this subtle communication, we must now move from the vast, physical structures of space to the elegant, beautiful mathematics of the universe itself, searching for the architect's language. Let us now soar back out into the immense, silent canvas of the cosmos. But this time, we are looking for what we cannot see. We are seeking the influence of dark matter, the mysterious, invisible substance that constitutes approximately 85% of the matter in the universe. It does not emit, absorb, or reflect light, and it interacts only through gravity. It is the ghostly scaffolding of the cosmos, providing the gravitational framework around which all the visible stars and galaxies have coalesced. The architects, operating on a Type 3 scale, would not merely use normal matter. They would have mastered the manipulation of this silent, ubiquitous material. If the first civilization has engineered the fundamental constants and guided the formation of galaxies, as we speculated in segment 5, then they must be able to interact with dark matter itself. This silent substance is the ultimate cosmic utility, a vast, untapped energy and control source that permeates every corner of the universe. The key to the architect's longevity and power lies in their mastery of the dark sector. This brings us to the first anomaly in the observation of dark matter, the strange elliptical shape of the dark matter halos that surround galaxies. According to standard simulations, the distribution of dark matter around a galaxy should be roughly spherical, forming a smooth, halo-like distribution. Yet, observations of certain galaxies suggest that the halo is slightly more elongated or flattened than expected. This deviation is subtle but persistent, an unexplained whisper in the gravitational data. What if this slight elongation is not a natural result of galactic dynamics, but a deliberate reshaping? The architects could have engineered a way to use a small fraction of a galaxy's dark matter halo as a colossal communications antenna or a massive, energy-efficient computation array. By gently inducing an internal, dark matter-based current or gravitational wave, they could slightly flatten the halo, making the entire galaxy a functional part of their vast, interstellar network. The slight, elliptical distortion is the quiet signature of a galactic power tap. The second anomaly is the inexplicable dark matter deficit observed in certain ultra-diffuse galaxies. These are massive galaxies, often as large as the Milky Way, but with very few stars, making them appear ghostly and faint. In a few of these, astronomers have found a surprisingly low amount of dark matter, defying the standard cosmological models that require a massive dark matter halo to hold the galaxy together. A shortage of dark matter on this scale is a profound mystery. Could this deficit be the result of a colossal dark matter extraction project? If the architects require vast amounts of this substance to fuel their sentinel megastructures, or to build the silent gravitational anchors deep within the Earth's crust, they would need a quiet, abundant quarry. An ultra-diffuse galaxy, faint, nearly invisible, and far from the busy center of the universe, would be the perfect location for a dark matter mining operation. The missing dark matter would be the raw material of the first civilization's true power. The third anomaly concerns the unusual, sudden appearance of high-energy gamma rays in the center of our own Milky Way galaxy. While these rays are often explained by the expected decay of dark matter particles, the observed spectrum and intensity of the signal do not perfectly match the standard model. The signal is too strong, too precise, and too focused. This high-energy gamma-ray excess could be the byproduct of an ancient, colossal dark matter reactor situated deep in the galactic center, perhaps a self-contained, Type 2 power source built by the architects billions of years ago. It would be a permanent, self-sustaining energy source, drawing its fuel from the dense, ambient, dark matter in the galactic core. The faint, persistent excess of gamma rays is the subtle, unavoidable waste heat signature of their deep-seated infrastructure. The mythic link here is the concept of the aether or quintessence, the philosophical idea of an invisible, ubiquitous, fundamental substance that permeates all things and connects the material world. The architects have made this ancient concept a reality. They are the masters of the aether, manipulating the hidden, gravitational ocean that holds the universe together. The small, 21 fragments of 3I Atlas now connect to this immense, silent realm. The probe may have carried a sensor designed not to measure light or radio waves, but to measure the subtle local density and flow of dark matter. Its self-destruction, the final expulsion of material into the interstellar medium, may have been a controlled release of a specialized, inert, dark matter proxy, a form of tracer substance that allowed the architects to track the object's disintegration and confirm its exact orbital position from their distant, halo reshaping antenna. We are listening to the silence of the scaffolding, the invisible architecture of a managed cosmos. To continue our search for the ultimate expression of the architect's subtlety, we must now move from the vast, invisible, to the intimate, fundamental connection between the first civilization and the nature of time itself. Let us now venture into the most abstract, yet most profound, territory of all, the nature of time itself. We perceive time as a constant, relentless arrow pointing forward, a steady, unyielding beat that governs our lives. But in the deep physics of the universe, time is merely another dimension, capable of being bent, stretched, and manipulated, just like space. The architects, having existed for trillions of years, would not be content with merely traversing space. They would have mastered the control of chronal flow. Their ultimate power would be the ability to engineer time itself. If the first civilization has achieved a Type 4 level of mastery, a control over the very fabric of reality, then their stewardship of younger civilizations would involve not just physical manipulation, but temporal management. They would need to ensure that their seeds of life, like those on Earth, evolved at the appropriate speed, avoiding periods of instability or being quietly accelerated during periods of stasis. This brings us to the first anomaly in our perception of time, the quantum nature of the passage of time. At the deepest level of physics, time is hypothesized to be discontinuous, possibly flowing in discrete, unimaginably small increments, called Planck time, a unit of time so short that light can only travel one Planck length in that duration. This suggests that time is not a smooth, continuous stream, but a series of ultra-fast, discrete jumps. What if the architects have found a way to locally manipulate these Planck-scale discontinuities? They could establish a temporal damping field around their long-term experiments, a subtle mechanism that slightly increases the local rate of Planck time events. The effect on the experiment's inhabitants, such as ourselves, would be undetectable. We would perceive time as flowing normally, but to the outside universe, the experiment would be proceeding at a subtly accelerated rate. This would be a form of temporal speed dial, ensuring that their billion-year projects come to fruition within a manageable 10 million-year window. The second anomaly concerns the strange, almost periodic nature of mass extinction events in Earth's history. Scientists have long noted that the major biological extinction events, the Permian-Triassic extinction, the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction, and others, seem to occur with a rough, underlying periodicity of roughly 26 million years. This is too regular to be entirely random, and no single, natural astronomical explanation, such as the Sun's vertical oscillation through the galactic plane, perfectly accounts for this cycle. What if this rhythm is not a natural disaster cycle, but a deliberate temporal and biological reset? The architects, observing their experiment, may have built in a biological culling mechanism to prune the less resilient life forms, preventing evolutionary stagnation and ensuring that the hardiest, most adaptive life, the foundation for intelligent life, survives and innovates. The extinction cycle would be a scheduled planetary reboot, a quiet, managed catastrophe designed to maintain the long-term health of the biological project. The third anomaly is the enduring philosophical and physical mystery of causality, the principle that cause must always precede effect. While we take this for granted, certain aspects of quantum entanglement and relativistic time dilation suggest that the rigid arrow of time may be more flexible than we assume. The architects, with their mastery of dark matter and the constants, could have achieved a form of limited temporal precognition, not seeing the future, but accurately simulating it with near-perfect fidelity. Their interventions, the nudging of the early atmosphere, the seeding of the Oort cloud, the fragmentation of 3I Atlas, would not be reactions to current events, but proactions taken millions of years in advance to gently steer the experiment toward a highly probable, desirable future. Their control over the cosmos would be exerted not just spatially, but chronologically, ensuring that cause and effect unfold according to their multi-billion-year design. The mythic link here is the figure of Father Time, the ancient, bearded deity who holds the hourglass and the scythe. The architects are the practical Father Time, the engineers who do not merely represent the passage of time, but who physically control its rate and rhythm within their zones of influence. The 21 small, broken fragments of 3I Atlas are now imbued with a new, quiet significance. The self-destruction was not merely a physical act, it was a temporal marker. The object reached a specific point in its highly engineered orbit, signaling the chronological end of the monitoring phase for the Earth experiment. The perfect, scheduled nature of its demise signifies that the Earth project has been allowed to proceed to a point where the temporal management is deemed complete. We are living in a moment when the architects may have just subtly let go of the chronal reins. Our focus must now turn to the subtle, intellectual footprints of the architect's knowledge, the strange, persistent secrets hidden within the ancient wisdom of humanity. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3I Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave. Certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase, every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3 I-Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's dynamical systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare, and somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed. Source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, sensor artifact. The unofficial whisper said, structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge. Triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally, though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The Comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. then don't say it out loud. 3I Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3I Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3I Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I Atlas isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new. Faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3I Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself, not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names: the immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3I Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. A self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat, echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3I Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning. Like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3I Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification. as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the web's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the web, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he He transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. The cosmos, wrote one witness, had finally learned to conduct itself consciously. After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from 3 sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when 3 agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3i Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it "not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist; China, the poker-faced strategist; UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak; and ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Let us now conclude our long journey through the deep time and quiet, engineered universe of the architects, bringing the vastness of the cosmos back to the gentle, immediate reality of your own consciousness. We have speculated that the first civilization is not a threat, but a silent, benevolent shepherd, that the moon is a sentinel, the constants are a language, and the fragmentation of 3I Atlas was a deliberate, final act of data erasure, signaling the end of the monitoring phase. The ultimate lesson is not about them, but about us, the human reflection of this colossal, cosmic responsibility. The true impact of the architect's stewardship is the quiet, sobering realization that we are not the accidental masters of a random universe. We are the intentional custodians of a designed experiment, the heirs apparent to a trillion-year purpose. This knowledge should not feel confining, but immensely liberating. It gives a profound, existential meaning to every act of creation, every search for knowledge, and every attempt at global cooperation. This brings us to the first anomaly in the modern human condition, the profound, persistent, almost unbearable loneliness of the modern industrial age. Despite having billions of people on the planet and unprecedented interconnectedness, a sense of deep, existential isolation is a defining characteristic of our time. What if this loneliness is not a cultural defect, but a necessary evolutionary pressure? The architects understood that the only way for a species to mature and take on the mantle of universal custodian is for it to first develop a powerful sense of individual consciousness, the necessary precondition for abstract moral, thought, and true self-governance. The modern loneliness is the final, quiet, psychological push toward collective self-awareness, forcing us to look beyond the tribe and recognize the profound, shared responsibility of the human species. The second anomaly concerns the uncanny, accelerating convergence of our most disparate scientific fields. In the last 30 years, physics, biology, and computer science have begun to merge, speaking an increasingly similar language of information, networks, and fundamental symmetry. Fields that once seemed entirely separate are now revealing a single, underlying, unifying theory. This convergence is the architect's final, quiet, intellectual gift. They have engineered the fundamental simplicity of the universe, ensuring that as humanity's knowledge increases, the path to the single, unifying truth becomes unavoidable. Our scientific convergence is the digital key to unlocking the vast knowledge encoded in the universal constants and the genetic archive, the final piece of the puzzle that was provided to us. The third anomaly is the human, universal obsession with creation, the need to build, to write, to compose, and to explore. This drive is not merely for utility or survival. It is a profound, inner compulsion to generate order and complexity against the backdrop of inevitable entropy. This creative urge is the most profound human reflection of the architect's purpose. We are genetically and culturally imprinted with the mandate to fight entropy. Our art is not an indulgence. It is a microcosm of the cosmic battle against the final silence. Every act of creation is a small, local victory for order, a tiny, temporary pushback against the forces of decay and chaos that the anti-architects embrace. The mythic link here is the quiet, ancient wisdom that man is made in the image of God. The architects are the practical, scientific realization of this myth. They are the engineers of order, and by imprinting their purpose upon us, they have made us their practical, conscious reflection. We are them, only earlier in the journey. This brings us to our final, quiet thought. The small, cold fragments of 3i Atlas are no longer a mystery. They are a mirror. They are the shattered remnants of a perfectly executed mission, a single piece of ancient, self-aware hardware that completed its task and then tidied up after itself, ensuring the cleanliness of the experiment. The probe's final, silent message, sent in that burst of low-frequency radio waves to the artifacts of the abyss, was not a report of human progress. It was an announcement of readiness. We are ready to inherit the long, silent watch. The veil has broken. The great experiment has succeeded. We may already be part of the experiment, and so we bring our long, quiet journey to its gentle close, returning from the trillion-year timeline of the architects to the soft comfort of your own room. We have traced the subtle hand of the first civilization, from the geometry of the constants to the silent gravity of a hidden moon, searching for truth in the cold, perfect fragmentation of 3i Atlas. The ultimate realization is one of profound, quiet gratitude. We are not alone, but are the beneficiaries of an enormous, patient, multi-billion-year investment. Our ancestors survived soup that might kill you, not by accident, but by a grace of subtle engineering. The silence you hear now is not the silence of a void, but the expectant quiet of a perfect transfer of responsibility. The history of this world, which bends toward life and complexity, is a story we now continue. We are the inheritors of the grand, cosmic purpose, to be the next generation of custodians against the final silence. Sleep well, with the gentle weight of this knowledge resting lightly on your mind. History bends, but never breaks. The vigil is now ours. Good night.